welcome to another Jurrnee event, the Hotel Hot Seat RMS to the rescue. In previous events, we've taken a broad overview of the hotel tech stack, and we thought, hey, it would be good if we dove a little bit deeper into the actual specific technology and looked at how each solution could help the hotelier pain points. Today we're starting with RMS, and across our session today, and we have a session tomorrow, you'll hear from 8 different RMS providers. Each will answer questions posed, you'll be glad to hear, not by me, but from genuine, real-life, bona fide hoteliers with strong revenue background. Now, enough from me. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started. These are our panelists. We haven't yet introduced them, but we're about to. So let's meet them and let's get started. So, can I welcome, please, no particular order, Marvin? Could I ask you to introduce yourself, please? That would be great.
Yes, thank you, Trevor. Awesome to be here with a lot of very great people. My name is Marvin. I'm one of the founders of RoomPriceGenie, and we're a revenue management software provider from Switzerland, but we have teams all over the world. So from Australia, New Zealand, Europe to North America, we're pretty much everywhere. Work with around 2,500 clients in over 50 different countries. And we work with properties of all kinds of sizes, but one thing that they do have is in common that they want to fully automate their pricing decisions with a tool they can trust. And this is what we do. So most of our clients come from pricing manually, and now they dive into the world of RMSs.
Perfect. Thank you. Andrew, if I can come to you next, please.
Sure. I'm Andrew Rubinacci. I'm Chief Advisory Officer for Flyr for Hospitality. We have just about 2,000 hotels currently on the platform. We do BI solutions, revenue management, systems and engine. We have from hostels all the way up to 1,000-room resorts all over the planet. And we're really trying to just move revenue management forward for the industry. That's our goal.
And I think with your colleagues on this panel. So Alexander, can I pass over to you, please?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here with this fabulous crowd here. My name is Alexander Edström. I'm the CEO of Atomize. We've been in the market since 2016. We are operating primarily Europe, Middle East, North America, or the Americas actually. And we also serve a variety of different kind of hotels and resorts and across those regions. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And Adrian, last but by no means least for our panel, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Adrienne, and I'm the founder of Right Revenue. We're actually based in Northern Ireland. So most of our clients are based either on the island of Ireland, the UK, and a little bit in Europe. We're probably smaller than many of the other guys here, small but perfectly formed. And I guess for me, I come from a revenue management background. I've been a revenue manager for 25 years. And Right Revenue was founded, I guess, because I wanted to provide independent, non-branded hotels with revenue management and let them operate on a level playing field. So I guess Right Revenue was born out of a consultancy background, and now we have a tech solution on top of that. So yeah, delighted to be here with some great people in the room.
Thanks so much. And let's pass over to our question master for this afternoon's session. Augustin, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great, please.
Absolutely. So I'm Augustin Cacot. I'm Vice President of Demand for YOTEL. I've worked in revenue management as well as revenue management technology for pretty much all my life, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And so what I want to do, before I just want to hand over, can I just say to anybody that's watching, you're more than welcome to ask questions in the chat as we go along. We will try to bring them into the discussion where appropriate, but we're also making a note of the questions, and we will follow up with the RMS guys after these events to answer any questions that we don't actually get to. So without any further ado, Augustin, let me pass it over to you and take the event away with the first question, please.
Thank you, Trevor. So I guess to open up, a question that is maybe simplistic, but perhaps not everybody agrees on, is what is actually the purpose of an RMS? And if I'm a revenue manager in a hotel, what should I do with the RMS, and what should I do outside of it? And so what's really the purpose, and quite simply, how do you define it? Andrew, I think you're first.
Yep.
Okay, I'm first. Yep. To me. Okay, so yeah, no, how you should use a revenue management solution. It's, it should be able to help you do your job, do the tactical work. The difference really, I think, what's transitioned over the years. I was early in revenue management as well. I was, the first revenue manager at IHG back in the early 90s. It was rudimentary, and we had no tools. And what a revenue management engine system is a tool that will help you make better decisions. It should be able to use the science behind it. I used to teach a course on it, and I do a whiteboard with a one-room hotel for open one day with 5 rates and what rate you should do. And when you do the math behind it, it fills up a whole whiteboard. So when you think about that simplicity and really the math and the science that needs to go behind it, we get great people who can do good things, but the tactical decisions really should be made by an automated system that can make millions of calculations, billions of calculations in seconds, and allow the people to do the strategy. Where do we want to go? How do we want to deploy the resources? What's the positioning of the asset? Those really are the thing is, I think they work hand in hand with the person and the system, and the system should be a big part of the tactical execution that assists with that.
Thank you very much. Alexander from Atomize, do you want to give us your take on this, please?
Thanks. No, but I agree with Andrew. When we started before Atomize, we were a revenue management system in the ad tech industry. There it was about very much, to a large extent, to automate based on data-driven decisions, to serve sort of right pricing points for different ads. And I think the mission for us, at least, is very much the same there. And also what Andrew said, that it's about, with so much data in the market, the mission is very well served for a machine to deliver this kind of sort of work for hotels. And I think that and it comes hand in hand with automation as well. And then the benefit of that is that it also side effect is that it saves time, obviously, as well. But I think the main purpose for revenue managers is to save time primarily, and but also to maximize yield as due to automation, I would say.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Adrian, can you please tell us what you think about that?
Yeah, I think, well, it's probably quite hard to follow those two guys because, I think we're all on the same page when it comes to what revenue management should do. There are different levels of revenue management in hotels. You've got people who are very, very early adopters. Back in my day, people using spreadsheets and trying to track things. And as Andrew said, you just cannot do it, there's just too many numbers. There's too many other things like, again, back in my day, you didn't think that TripAdvisor had reviews had an impact on pricing, or, there was lots of things maybe traditionally that revenue managers didn't think about that now impact pricing. So I think that sort of traditional way of trying to understand pricing, revenue management systems automate that perfectly. And we use the tagline, and we do the smarts so you can do the strategy. And that we say very openly, we're doing the heavy lifting. That's what we're doing. We're doing the math, and we're presenting all those hundreds and thousands and millions of data points back to you in a very easy way so that you can actually go on with going, okay, this system has just alerted me to need dates in September. I don't need to think about July and August. I'm good. I need to be over here in September. This is where my eyes need to be. So I think that's what we're doing. We're running the math. We're showing you where your eyes need to be. But I think, Alexander, you're also perfectly correct. It's saving so much time for individuals. We've got less people now doing more jobs. So if we can help automate that process, I think that's what all of these tech providers do, is allowing that a hotel to be more commercially aware and more efficient.
That's great. Thank you very much, Adrian. Marvin, you're last but not least.
Yeah, I think it's I think that's super interesting, and the fact that we all agree should. I'm asking myself, why does it not lead to a very high adoption rate of revenue management systems? Because we all agree that the thing just does the work, right? You do the strategy, the thing does the work. But then I feel like the industry has moved. We are always trying to innovate and to keep developing, and that's why revenue management for 90% of the hotels has become this ivory tower discipline that is to some extent even scary to adopt, because it seems like those systems are intransparent, and maybe we'll speak about this later, but also very complex, and they seemingly do so much more than just pricing. So I think when the question is what should a system do, the question back should be what do you need, and what do you do currently? So ideally, what we do is whatever you do at the moment, we just do it more often, we do it more accurately, we do it faster, and I think that's sort of where we are coming from. I think we all agree that the revenue management tools always go along with the person that needs to know what they want. You cannot just set up a tool without knowing anything about where you're setting it up for. But then depending on the availability that the revenue manager has, they might still spend quite a lot of time on the system, and then you can allow to have a more complex system that lets you intervene more, that lets you do forecasting, where you can dive deep into data. But then you also have hoteliers that actually don't have the time to do anything of that, and they maybe only have 2 hours a week. And then the question is, how do those two systems differ? And I think with this understanding, that's when we started, and we tried to then build a system that's easy to use, meaning it's intuitive, and no matter who you are, you can get into the system and start using it very quickly. We're a big fan of transparency, because we realized in the beginning that with a black box system, it's very difficult to penetrate the market, because hoteliers are not in the business for running tech, they're in the business for hosting people, and then technology is just a supporting tool behind it, and that's exactly what the tool needs to look like and function at. So it needs to generate trust, and ultimately we're all here to make you more money. And I think these three things combined is what we think an RMS should do, and they don't all have to serve everyone, so there is no one size fits all. It's really, what do you need, what do you do, and are we the right solution for you?
That's great, thank you. So I think we'll get into forecasting that you mentioned a bit after. One thing that you guys all mentioned was automation of pricing, which of course makes a lot of sense. And Marvin, you also mentioned transparency. So I'm curious to ask all of you, how do you really work on that transparency? Meaning, how can I explain the pricing decision that comes out of a RMS? If my GM is challenging me, telling me why is the price £200 on that day, how do you balance the complexity of what's under the hood with human beings, your user, that actually have to justify what they're doing, and they have to understand what's happening? And how do you do that with various level of sophistication within your user base? I think we'll start with merry-go-rounds. I think, Alexander, you're the first on that one, please.
Interesting. Yeah. So when we started Atomize, we actually only started with algorithm, and we had a very thin UI. And we thought, coming from the ad tech industry, because that was how it worked there, you had an algorithm and you pulled some reports based on that performance, and that was good. Well, then hoteliers tend to be more, they want more, always want more. So we started then to actually craft based on the feedback user interface, and we added and visualization and feedback, and we are still working on that. And it's tricky many times, because these requirements or these requests about visualization and an understanding behind the algorithm also it differs from one revenue manager to another hotelier, and it should serve so many different stakeholders as well. So I have to be transparent and say, like, it's not easy to do that. It's a continuous process, but we are going from nothing to where we are today, but we are not even near to where I want to go. But I think in the end of the day, I mean, the way I see this in the direction it's going as well is that when we started with Atomize 2016, those players that have been in the market, the legacy ones, if you put it that way, then that was more of a reporting frenzy, like who had most reports. And so it was to visualize it in that way for the revenue manager. I think the mission is about to change now, because we can see that now it's more a question of how many hotels can one revenue manager serve, right? And we hear 10, we hear 20, we have more than 50 hotels per revenue manager and so on. So I think it's also transition in the mission is moving also to automation. And that will end up, I believe, is about trust, where you trust the deliverance of what we do. Then you don't require as much visuals, right? So it's a trust balance as well. But the easy answer here is that I think it's a continuous process, and we're working on it continuously, and you need to prove.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you. And I think is there, just to add a bit of a dimension to it, like how there's also an element of, if there is automation, how do I tell my RMS that I want to take more risk?
Yeah.
You know, like that, like, and I don't know if you have something to add to that, but it's part of it too, like, because there's a trust aspect, which I agree, you know, with time I think things get better, but there's also the, like, where are my buttons to push if things are, you know, hard to run the strategy.
Yeah. No, so currently for Atomize at least, currently we need simply if someone, that's a tweak we need to do. Now we're working on the ability to have aggressiveness and so on, to be able we call it control automation, where the revenue managers can put more aggressiveness in the system to certain periods or days even, and so on, the seasons and so on. Because it's important, because to serve these revenue managers, what they want is to be able to have control in the end, right? But then on the other side of things, I have meet with hoteliers every day that expect us to be able to, they shouldn't even need to chip in on this. They expect the RMS to take care of this, when it should be aggressive and when it shouldn't. So there's also two sides of that coin. So you don't want to go too far either on that end. So where you put too much, which is going in a direction where you actually talk less about automation, I think, because that's not where we're going to end up in the end. But but you need to obviously offer that, but the system should take care of it, if you ask me, in terms of where it should be aggressive and where it shouldn't.
That's great. Thank you very much. Adrienne, do you want to give us your take on this, please?
Yeah, I will. And I'm going to mention again, sort of just my background of coming from that revenue management side and then developing the system out of it. And I mention that only because we always say that we're hospitality first and tech to back that up. And I guess for us, we have, until recently, we have always moved away from a fully automated system, because I was used to being a revenue manager, and the hotels that we were serving had someone commercial in, someone to, that great quote of without technology, you're just another person with an opinion. Without data, sorry, you're just another person with an opinion, and without an opinion, just another person with data. So we wanted to give hotels great data, great recommendations, but actually allow the person in the hotel to make that decision. Do I accept that? Do I move it by £1, €1? What do I want to do? We have moved away from that slightly, in that we are giving hotels now the choice, because I think what was said very early on, there's lots of different flavors of hotels and lots of different flavors of revenue managers. So we have that fully check. Every rate recommendation goes back for a hotelier to check if that's what you want. We have full automation if that's what you want, but we also do this little hybrid which is working very well for a lot of our hotels. And it's like, we are happy for Right Revenue to change our rate as long as it's no more than £5 in a day or £15 over the space of a week. So we're trying to make that more flexible for hotels because we see that commercial role changing. And I think, Alexander, you're right. It's something that no company should ever say that they have a fully developed system, because if you say that, you're dead in the water. Things are changing, customer needs are changing. So we're constantly trying to look at, what's coming next. And I think what the guys have said already is trying to make something as easy as possible for people to visualize, to get their data, to get their rate recommendations is super important. To have more complexity for those who want it, sort of 2 clicks away or further down, for those revenue managers who are really interested, like me, and I'm a data nerd, so that the data is there, that it's available to you. But I think that we have to make it less scary, and that is because all of us are going into hotels and saying, "Can I have your baby, please?" You're literally taking a hotel's baby and saying, "I'm going to look after your baby, and I'm going to let it grow, and I'm going to let it crawl and walk and do all these wonderful things for you." You're asking a hotel to hand over their commercial success to tech. So I think you have to be very careful in how you present that, how you design it, and the flexibility around that system. And I think all of us are on the same page that is always evolving. And from what Marvin said at the beginning, we need to sit down, all of us, and sit down and ask our hoteliers, what actually do you want? How do you want your commercial strategy to be ran? Because if we don't suit your commercial strategy, then one of these other great players in the market will. But you have to work out as a hotel what you want, and then see who fits that way of working best. But I think we're all on the same page of, we all want to make a hotel commercially more successful. And if we can do that in our own unique ways, then I think as an industry, we're winners for sure.
That's great. Very interesting. Thank you. Marvin, do you want to give us your take, please?
Yeah, I loved all the comments. I think in order, autopilot is sort of this thing. If people accept an autopilot, then that means full sign of trust, and full sign of trust in our sense comes from transparency. So revenue management is about, the way it is done, should be done today, is about combining a machine with a human. And if the human does not trust the machine, because the human does not understand the machine, then we don't really have a good match. And I think one pitfall that our segment has fallen into is that when it comes to transparency, we focus too much on the how we do things and not on the what. And with the how we do things, I mean that oftentimes we hide behind buzzwords. We hide behind the term algorithm, AI, machine learning, where, if we're being honest, and I've had this discussion with Alex a couple weeks ago, we don't even agree what these terms mean, but they're very good to hide and to stop hoteliers from asking questions. And I think that's a fairly dangerous endeavor if we cannot generate trust, but we try to avoid the difficult discussion. And what we actually should ask is what do you do? And when we are with RoomPriceGenie, we've always been overly transparent with how things work. And we don't want to use all those buzzwords, but we want to use what's the logic behind the system. And when you ask a hotelier, how would you do things if you had unlimited amounts of time? So if the day had 200 hours and not 24, and you didn't need to sleep, most of the hoteliers would say that a price should be made up of certainly external and internal factors. So external factors might be what are others doing, what are general market trends. I know that Atomize, for example, you use forward-looking data also for flights, so that's a good indicator for what's going on. So you look at the outside world and you understand demand trends, and then every hotelier would also say, but I also need to look at my own books, because it doesn't matter what's going on out there. If I'm not performing, then I need to move differently. And that's how we at RoomPriceGenie, even in the system, that's the breakdown that you get. So on every individual day, you will understand, okay, the market is up 50%. Down there, I see, okay, there is an event going on. That makes sense. But because I'm still at, and that's why I'm increasing my prices by 50%, but I'm still selling way too quickly. So seems to be like more opportunity to make more money, and then you can increase the price even more. So I think that's what we try to do. We try to help you understand the concept of the system, the idea of how we think of revenue management. And that for us has been very successful because it leads to a lot of trust. So once people understand these are the little knobs that RoomPriceGenie is turning, they turn on auto upload because they do have the trust. And I think at the moment we are at roughly 95% of our clients have the system on auto upload. And that's also where we see the future, because you as a revenue manager, or a lot of the hotels that we work with don't even have a revenue manager. They have a GM that takes care of everything. You have a lot of other things to do. You shouldn't be waking up in the morning for 3 hours overriding prices because you don't trust your system. But you should let it run. You should trust it. And I think one thing that we oftentimes forget in those discussions is when you're buying an RMS, you're not only buying technology, you're also buying the people behind it. Because if you need help, they're the ones that jump in. And it feels to me as if today, as a hotelier, it's not easy to differentiate when you're getting a demo of a system. How are those things different? Because we would, and that's very normal, we would all speak about the same things. We would say automation is very important. We would say you should get some kind of reports out of the system. Forecasting is nice to have. We would say that there is some level of human intervention possible. And then it effectively also comes down to, who are you going to be working with when you're doing the revenue management? Do you trust those people to do this job with you? Because it's not deal signed and we don't hear each other anymore. It's deal signed and that's when the work begins. Yeah, so transparency, to summarize, super important because transparency generates trust. And I think it's our job to move over from the how to the what we actually do to make sure that hoteliers know the system that they're implementing.
Okay, super, thank you. Andrew, I think you're last to give you your version of
yeah. So I mean, there's a lot to agree with here, but I think we approach it in somewhat similar fashion, but there are differences, right? We believe in transparency. I think everyone says they do, and we'll give as much information as possible. But these are complex things. Like I said, I've been in this part of the industry as a user, a selector systems for years and years, but I'm not a data scientist. So to go through different, 20 different forecasting approaches, we'll show you all that, but it becomes really, really complex. So I think you got to do some things to work as proxies. We have a very strong advisory team, with people like myself who've been in revenue management that can help the hotels not only understand the systems, but with their strategies. But we do need to use a proxy. So I never knew if a group feature was working in a revenue management system. I would always look at secondary displacement. I knew that was an indicator of if it was showing displacement because of pattern and not just on the day of arrival. I knew that was an issue. So we use proxies. We show proxies and say, look, this will give you some trust that the system's doing the calculations in the background. We'll show you all the calculations if you want them. We'll be more than happy to get our data scientists on the phone with you to do it. But our head data scientist worked at CERN and the Super Collider for 10 years doing the Higgs boson. I mean, he must think I'm a monkey. And he's fantastic. He'll be explain everything possible. But I think you got to use proxy. So. We've got, forecasting, percentage error, right? Absolute percentage error. We show that. And we show our forecast day by day, segment by segment. Here's what your forecast was, our forecast. Here's the variance. This is what's going on. When you make a price override, and it's not really an override. We call it an input. We believe that the revenue manager knows something. If they're going in there and you're pricing it at 240 euros a night, the system's saying 240, and you say, no, it needs to be 270. And I have all these reasons why. we'll take that as an input. A lot of systems fight with you and try to reset it back to 240. We'll take that as something. You're a person, and we've got to be transparency. And what we do with that is at the bottom of the screen, it basically shows the new price, and it'll optimize. You can freeze it or optimize it, and it'll show you what the AI price is. So you can see if over time, is it getting closer to you? Is it changing? Has the AI really picked up something? But your price will be in there. So and I think the last thing from transparency standpoint is the BI capabilities. I mean, we all have access and use super granular data to do this now, down to the transaction level with the entire transaction history. I think Alex mentioned it was a race to reports. We just created a full BI suite where you can, we have standard templates. You can make your own templates, but you can really interrogate the data and get down into it and go as deep as you want. Or if you're an executive and just want the overview, you can just look at the overview dashboards. But I think that type of access to the data, the information, the transparency, a team to work with, all those things, generate trust. And when we take a look at our system, we've got, believe it or not, only 5% of the dates are ever touched by a person. Now, those are needed, and we love it, but when you've got someone managing, especially a central revenue manager, managing 8, 10, some cases 50 hotels, that's still a lot of work they have to do. So the system, as long as the trust is there, transparency there, should be able to do a lot of that day in and day out tactical work and let the people focus on those 5% of the days that really need the help. And that's, I think that is that blend of the machine and the person coming to the best outcome.
Okay, thank you. You made an interesting point on when somebody overrides. You said you take that into account. Is that into a forecast or is that into future pricing decisions? Like, well, how do you guys do that?
Both. It is future pricing decision and forecast. I mean, now it's going to sound, I don't want to sound like Marvin. I tell you, we are AI based, right? So the algorithms are constantly changing, which also makes it difficult to say, here's our algorithm, take a look at it. It's constantly learning and changing. And most of the newer systems have that, right? And people on the call here have that. It continues to change. So when you put that human input in, saying that rate, it'll say, okay, you must know something that I don't have that data point. And it takes and uses it as a data point and then incorporates it into the algorithm. A lot of in my old world, you end up fighting with the systems. You said, oh no, I know what's going on. I'll use Taylor Swift because everyone uses Taylor Swift's concerts. Taylor Swift is potentially announcing for this day, I need to take it up, 400 pounds. And I know that the system didn't have that and would fight you constantly. We take that into consideration, saying, something. We're assuming we're working with great professionals, smart people that know their market.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking about. Is like, so what if you have a team of revenue managers and one of them is excellent and the other person is not so good at their job? What do you deal with the inputs differently, or are you able to report on that?
Well, look, it always keeps the original AI thing. So at the bottom, you'll see this is what the AI without your input would have done.
Oh, okay.
And you have the forecasting error and the overall outcome error, which we track down to the day and the rate code. So yeah, eventually, if you're the VP of revenue, you'd say, okay, and when you'd be able to track with our BI, Tom Smith is doing a really horrible job because he's overriding 27 things. The results are better. The forecast error is worse. Everything's bad. And, Sue Smith is doing fantastic and she does X. You can get that level of granularity and understand who's doing well, who's doing poorly. And then, do the coaching and training you need to with your teams.
That's great. Thank you. So you talked about forecasting, which I guess is a perfect transition to that very topic, because I think I've heard pretty much everything on the topic of pricing and forecasting and how they should or shouldn't interact. From just to give a bit of context, I've based on various RMSs, I've heard that if you want to change the price, then you need to change the forecast, and that's the only way you can change the price, which is a little bit very much outdated now. But I think that's how what was described by Alexander as legacy systems used to do it. And then you also have the other extreme, which is some systems saying that forecasting may be something important, but it has nothing to do with pricing, and it should be left to maybe a finance Excel spreadsheet or something, and or at least shouldn't influence the pricing. Some of them think it should be done room type. Some of them think it should be done by segment. I've rarely seen both done well at the same time. So we have really, it seems to be one topic where there's one of the last topics where there's disagreements between RMSs. What is your take on that? And I think Adrian, you're first for that one.
Oh, it's such an interesting subject. So I think there's a couple of things. It actually surprises me that even after 30 something years in this industry, hotels still get mixed up between a budget and a forecast. And it cracks me up. So we take a hotel's budget and we say, thank you very much. That's really interesting. We display it through all parts of the system so the hotel can always see how they're doing against budget. But we take it and we leave it over here because that's really interesting for someone in the hotel. But a budget is usually, can you get me at 12% up on last year or 3%? There's no thought behind a budget usually. So we take that budget and we display it and we use it as a metric, but only for a hotel to judge how they're doing. A forecast for me is something that we do take into consideration with pricing. And I guess that is because, again, traditionally, I'm not saying any of these systems do it, by the way, but I'm just saying traditionally, hotels would have gone, okay, well, I've 20 rooms sold, now I move my price. Well, now I have 40 rooms sold, I'm going to bump it up again. And they base their pricing on business on the books. Whereas when we started to build Right Revenue, I wanted to build a system that worked how I work in a hotel. And that is, where am I now? Where do I think I'm going to get to? And how's that business mix going to be made up? So if I'm looking at a day, the Tuesday, the 10th of March next year, the first thing a revenue manager will do when they go into a property is, okay, how do Tuesdays in March normally behave? Where should I be sitting 6 months out? Am I sitting roughly there? Where do I end up? What's that business mix? What's transient? What's contract that I can't? So you start to look at, when do those segments come in? When do they start to pick up? What is the price point? Where are you pacing ahead or behind? So I think it's really, well, for us, it's really important to take that forecast into consideration. So we're looking at, where are you today? Where do we forecast that you're going to be by market segment? And then we will make rate recommendations by market segment based on how they're pacing. Are they ahead? Are they behind? Have you lost corporate contracts? Or you've got busier weddings? Have you got a leisure segment that's outperforming? So we reforecast several times a day if needed. Most of our hotels will forecast once a day, but we do base our rate strategy around not only just obviously the business on the books, but the forecasted demand as well. I think that's really important to us, and we do that by segment.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And so your users, when they want to change a price, can they do that and that impacts the forecast, or they need to change the forecast to change the price?
No, they change the price and that will change.
And that will, okay, so the order is more natural, if that makes sense, but there's still a connection between the two. Okay.
Yeah, and just one of the earlier points there on how can someone impact pricing? We have impact factors. So if we're returning a rate of, let's say, 200 quid, and like you said, Andrew, Taylor Swift is coming and we don't know that. We should know that, by the way, but let's say something, or I tell this story very often. We have hotels in the centre of Ireland that get phenomenal demand based around a ploughing championship. And that ploughing championship moves dates every year, so you can't even predict when it is. So the hotels on the ground will know that's happening before we do. So they can very quickly put an impact factor on to say, we know that rate is being returned at €200. We know that that event is going to be sometime that week. Let's impact our rates. Let's put those up. So, the hotel can do that, and that will immediately impact their forecast and their pricing decisions. So for me, they work hand in hand, because that's how I work as a revenue manager. So they work hand in hand.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Marvin, I think you're next.
I loved what you said in the beginning, Adrian, because that's really what it's like. A lot of hotels don't even use a forecast now. So I think if you're forecasting, and if this is a topic of meetings that you have regularly, then you're already in the, just I guess, like top 10% of the hotels globally. So 90% of the hotels, they wouldn't even care about a forecast. And I think when we started, well, maybe if you look at forecast and pricing, they actually have a performance forecast and pricing. They have similar needs when it comes to making them up. So you need to understand demand for both. So a demand forecasting model will in fact impact both your performance forecast, but also your pricing when you do it. And we just started with the demand forecast to help us with the pricing. So we didn't even look at a performance forecast. In the beginning of RoomPriceGenie, we didn't even have reporting, because we thought, well, our job is to get the prices right, and the reporting most likely is going to be within the PMS, which we then very quickly figured out oftentimes it isn't, or it's inaccurate, or it's oftentimes it isn't. So we're, after that, we're on similar lines than Right Revenue. So we also we're actually reworking our forecast at the moment, and the question that we're asking ourselves: how can we make a forecast useful to someone who never cared about a forecast? So someone who doesn't even know what a forecast is should see their forecast and should say, well, that's interesting. And then a forecast should be something that's actionable. So for ourselves, we're not looking too much to what this looks like on the outside, but for ourselves, we're trying to innovate on the forecast front, but then also forecasting on a segment, on segments, forecasting on a daily basis. But yeah, to us, they're split.
Okay, great. And so you say your forecast should be actionable, and that made me think of when I was a revenue manager many years ago in my early career. If I wanted people to do what I want, I would drop the forecast by 300,000 euros, and then suddenly everybody was listening to me. Is it a bit what you mean by actionable, or is it pricing actions that they can take, or is it communicating internally so you can show the GM or a CEO? Like what did you mean by actionable?
I can't talk too much about it because we're still building it and figuring it out. But for us, it's about it's about starting a communication with the hotelier and using the forecast and the forecast data to start chatting with the hotelier and help him rethink his pricing strategy. Because if we figure out that, very simple example, within RoomPriceGenie, you can change your minimum and maximum prices. You have boundaries for your pricing, which we believe makes sense because it adds a level of comfort to the hotelier. A lot of hoteliers don't want to go above a certain price because they feel like they're cheating their guests. And even though it might not be the best thing financially to do, it's who they are and what they think is right. And I think as a business owner, you still have the freedom to make this decision. But what if the forecast would run without all your pricing limitations and with a different setup of input settings from the user? And we could tell you, actually, in summer, you should rethink that your maximum prices for your double room shouldn't be 199, but you should do 229. That's going to make you that much more money. And it's actually not going to affect your pricing score because according to what we understand from the environment around you, everyone else is also increasing their daily price for the double room by X%, and you're actually below that with this limit that you've put in manually. So by this, we want to get into a conversation, and there I'm actually going to use the word AI now as well, so that we can build conversational models that go into a conversation with the client based on the data that we see in our forecasting. So that's what I mean with making forecasting actionable by running different scenarios,
so
depending
contextualize
on
contextualize.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, super. Andrew, what's your version of it?
Yeah, a lot's been said here. So look, there's forecasting is extremely important and always has been in the industry. It was originally the foundation, but I think things have changed and morphed. Pricing definitely impacts forecasts, and you don't have to be a technologist to just understand if you priced your hotel at $1 million a room, you would have zero forecast. And if you did $1 per room, it'd probably be full. And you take it to the egregious, really the extremes there, and you go, okay, then it absolutely has an impact on your forecast, and they have to be linked by somewhat. But what I think's changed, and what Adrian said, we used to, as an industry, build things up on the books, move things almost rules based. If you hit 20% occupancy, you took it up another 10 euros, pounds, dollars, whatever it was. One thing, I'll take a negative, turn it to positive. COVID taught us a lot. And when I was at Omni and during COVID, I was the chief commercial officer there. We had a lot of resorts, and we weren't going to run sold out, but I was able to take rates up 40, 50%. And the people who were traveling, with the pricing was very inelastic. They were going to come regardless of how much I did, but I wasn't going to fill the 500 room resort up, especially in that summer of 2020. And in Texas was where we had it. So we were actually open in summer 2020 because we didn't really have COVID here. But it did teach us, and that it's not as linked as you would think as far as what price you can generate by segment and by room type compared to what your forecast is. It's the elasticity, and it always has been the elasticity of what is the customer willing to pay and when they're willing to pay it. And you might only have a finite number of customers that are willing to pay a very high amount, but if that's all that's traveling, you might as well get the high round. Discounting is not going to increase your occupancy. So understanding that and using the forecast and the tools, what we do is we optimize 24 times a day, every hour. So we do a lot of experimentation on pricing elasticity, and if it's inelastic, we will continue to take up the rates regardless of the forecast, because we know we'll capture more revenue. We'll get a better end result. And it's that constant experimentation and testing of pricing. And now the capabilities are there because the computing power is there and everything's cloud-based. You can do, 24 times a day. We're trying to go to 48 times a day, and constantly make it more and more refined. So yeah, just because I'm forecasting 70% doesn't mean I don't have pricing power in some segments or some room types. I might. And I think that's really what's changed over the last few years as we've gotten better. I think it's really shown because when you take a look at what happened in 21, 22, 23, the industry went up with pricing across the board. Now there's some inflationary pressures, but occupancies weren't anywhere near to what they were in 2019. So the industry did learn that, you can go ahead and have some pricing power regardless of the overall demand that's out there. Obviously, always easier when you're going to sell out. You can take things up, but I think those are things that we really learned and taken around the edges. And with the right system and tool, you can really drive that revenue in times when you might not have thought you were going to sell out, or might not sell out. And we were told many years, I need revenue to manage. Well, there's revenue out there. Can you capture as much of it as you can? Then there's all the, do I want to overprice the hotel and all those other factors you have to take from a hotel positioning standpoint. But from a pure math, there are opportunities, and I think that's really what's exciting me.
Okay, no, thank you. That's interesting. So I think maybe the problem is that revenue managers have a bonus on having an accurate forecast. Maybe that's more of a problem than having a forecast because they're supposed to make money rather than being too accurate. But it is a good point that testing elasticity this way is definitely something that revenue management systems weren't doing, to my knowledge, a while back. So thank you for that, Alexander. You're last on this question.
Yeah, a lot of things have been said, but I think that our view on this is that of course, budget is budget, and that is nothing near the forecast. But we launched our new forecasting model quite recently, a month ago, and where we see it as you need to have the ability to have the snapshot, which is sort of what do we forecast simply for the next month, right? And where you can also assess accuracy and so on. But then, reality is, so here I very much agree with Ariane that things are happening, in the market. And it would be foolish for an RMS if we would say that we are not willing to adjust the forecast if there is need to do it. So it needs to continuously be done, right, throughout. And you can assess that versus the snapshot forecast then and see the accuracy and so on. But I think in the end of the day, I mean, we can only forecast based on the data at hand. That's sort of the core of it. Meaning, back to also to what Adrian mentioned about this event that is, you know, popping up at uncertain locations, different that no one knows about. I mean, who can ever know that? But as soon as you get that data, you should obviously redo your forecast, and that you need to do. So, and we had this phenomenon in Sweden. You might know that we won Eurovision last year or the year before the last one. So we got Eurovision in Sweden this year. In that very moment, no one knew where, in what city, the Eurovision contest was supposed to take place. So what happened then was that, and here comes into play the data, because since we are taking, as Marvin, you mentioned it, we're taking into the top of funnel data, the search pressure data from the OTAs. So we registered in real time the searches for hotel night stay just skyrocketed in the 3 biggest cities in Sweden, Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö at the same time. That occurred, what happened then with our clients in these cities, all prices went up and the forecast obviously went up based on this because, I mean, based on this this data. But, and then I think it was the day after they announced that it was Malmö that got the Eurovision, which is the 3rd biggest city in Sweden. And all of a sudden you need to reforecast obviously for all 3 cities because that's changed the pattern as well. So again, so forecast needed to be brought down for Stockholm and Gothenburg while it remained high for Malmö, and also prices were adjusted accordingly and so on. So to what Andrew said, and I think everyone has said, is that there is obviously a correlation between price and forecast, and there should be. The thing is that how we view this as well is that so the real-time price optimization is continuously running and it's assessing if it can find the current pattern in patterns that are happening right now in pickups and everything. If it can find that in the historical data, less weight is put to more weight is put into historical data as a foundation for the forecast. But the important thing as I see it is that when things change, meaning that in real time, things are changing in real time, and Atomize, the algorithm can't find that pattern in the historical data, then low to no weight is put as an input for historical data into the forecast. And that needs to happen in real time. Same thing with top of funnel data into this. So these all data sources need, first of all, be qualitative, right? But also they need to be, according to me at least, dynamically weight balanced. So because I think many revenue managers today, they look at last year's performance and they draw a line. I want to be here with 5% increase, fix it. And well, nice, but it's not a good forecast. It's maybe the best at hand if you don't have any granular data. But I think we have come much more further than that. And with the data at hand we have, and be able to process this data and adjust for whatever it might be. So prices, yes, absolutely have an effect on forecast, but at the same time you also need to readjust and reassess the forecast at any given point in time together with a snapshot forecast to be able to assess accuracy, I would say.
I see. And thank you. And so you've mentioned like having the right data and taking it into account. Like how do you guys tackle if I know that in Scandinavia there's a bunch of places that you can only reach by ferry. So if there's no ferry, like your pricing is irrelevant. And I know it's a silly example, but or at least it's not relevant to every hotel. But can you sort of throw any sort of decent quality data at Atomize, or is it something where you guys have to work for months and months to add something?
Yeah, we are very, very picky on the data, or especially our data science team is very picky on not letting any noise into the algorithm because it will just mess things up. So it's a very thorough process to qualify a data source. And so, I mean, that's the, bad data in, very bad results out, right? That's still is the case. Now it's not just to throw in a data source and hope for the best. I wouldn't say so. I don't.
No, but we were like, if let's say if I have a bunch of hotels that only have customers coming through ferry, is it something that you would work on integrating, or would it require knowing if a data is meaningful enough for?
Yeah, we do custom development but guys need to pay for it. So the product prices that are custom, but it's usually quite expensive as well. But it's definitely doable. I mean, it's a matter of alternative costs that needs to be taken into consideration, and so on. And that's how we built, for instance, the special product for Silverstone Formula One Grand Prix, which is a tailored product for doing dynamic pricing for them, for instance. Everything is possible, but it's a matter of, as I think everyone agrees upon around on here on the session, is that I mean it's limited resources, and you need to spend those resources wise in terms of development resources. I mean, so
that makes sense. Thank you. And so I think you talked about, we talked about sort of third-party data going into a forecast or not in the forecast, depending on if it's relevant and if people can afford it. In sort of to lead into my next question, and I think it will be first for Marvin. What would you say? How open should the RMS be? And so by that I mean we talked about integrating data into the RMS. There's competitor data, like market intelligence, competitive pricing, reviews, all these things, and it's great. As Alexander mentioned, it's not always possible or feasible to do, and not everything will be included in any single RMS anyway. So what is your stance on your customers using your data without logging in necessarily into a revenue management system to do that? And that means exposing reporting APIs, which maybe is for more sophisticated customers, but I believe it's changing very, very quickly, that level of access to a bit more complex use of technology. And how can hotels, because I know that it's been a pain point of mine in very many different jobs, where I have to log into like 6 systems just to sometimes to know things that are not that valuable, and so some things are worth £500, and so they're not worth 10 minutes, because you should be generating more money than that per 10 minutes, hopefully. And so it's all about like, how can I solve my problem as a hotelier, which is not always, you guys are doing amazing things for hoteliers, but you can't solve everybody's unique problem, because it's just not possible, right? At the same time, if we can't, if we get a PDF report for email, hoteliers are kind of stuck, right, in most cases. So Marvin, what's your stance with RoomPriceGenie on that, and how do you tackle the sort of balancing between wanting to have users use your platform, but also letting them use your data alongside other data sources that they want to use?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I had a discussion with Matt from Muse. It was a while back, and I hope I get it together correctly, because we discussed, we're speaking about the topic of integration. We discussed how many integrations does a Muse user on average have. And I think we would all agree that Muse as a PMS definitely being used by the more sophisticated, by the more tech-savvy people. And I think outside of the internal products that Muse offers, the number was 5, if I'm not mistaken. So it was not, when you look at the hotel tech report, what kind of tech systems are out there, where you find, I don't know, 40, 50 different segments. That's not the amount of tech solutions that a hotel usually uses. When we look at our client base, the number is even lower. So a very, very standard setup would be, you have a PMS, a channel manager, a booking engine, and then you link the RMS up to it. And then it comes down to the question, what do you need as a hotelier? I'm not going to throw solutions at you that you're not really looking for. And I think that goes back to the who is the user of the system, and that there is no one size fits all, because I can fully understand that someone that uses Flyr as a revenue platform, they're actually looking for a lot to be done within the system, because this is a system that's designed for someone whose full-time job it is to do revenue management, and revenue management is more than just doing the pricing. So, and Andrew, correct me if this is incorrect what I'm saying, but the idea is give someone all the information, or as much information as possible, from within one system. But for us, it is definitely different, because we are a system where they typically spend maybe an hour a week on, because they have enough other things to do. Or if it's a group, then it's maybe an hour per property that the revenue manager spends on RoomPriceGenie. And if you look at, and that comes back to something that we picked up in the beginning and also just discussed before the call, our estimate currently is that around 50,000 hotels globally use a revenue management system. Of them, maybe 20,000 are independents. And the question is not what all can I build within my RMS. The question is what needs to be within the RMS for this to be the best possible solution for the other 950,000 hotels that don't use anything at the moment. So the question is it's a little bit torn in between what's possible and what's necessary, because there's certainly a lot that's possible, and we can bloat up our systems and make them more complicated. But it then needs to be for the right people that can make use of all these additional tools that we built for them. If someone just needs something simple that gets the task of pricing out of the way, give them something simple that gets the pricing task out of the way.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's great. Just one thing to before we go to Andrew, and you get an answer on your take on Flyr. But what's your take on the BI aspect of it too? Because I think you explained really well sort of how complex the integration should be with systems that are supposed to do something like sell rooms or check people in or like whatever each system does. But I think there's also a bit of a like friction area, which is I want you people to use as an RMS, my reporting and my dashboards and all of that, and a lot of users being like, well, I want your data, I love your pricing, but I'm doing my own BI. Maybe I have a BI tool, maybe I code it myself, maybe I want to change my BI strategy. Like it might be a separate thing, but I need access to that. So how would you answer the question, but as related more to like the BI decision making?
Yeah, so I mean, the first question is who has the better data? Where would you tap into the data source to get the accurate things? And I think that's where all of our integration teams spend a lot of hours on, to making sure that whatever the PMS has matches with what we have, because there are so many things that oftentimes don't match up. So that's a lot of hard work. But then we actually allow customers to export the data that they want. So we don't want to tie them in. We satisfy the 95% of our clients, and they have the reporting in the system that they need. And oftentimes they don't require very complicated reporting, because they don't need to justify their job in front of a group of people that ask a lot of questions on a weekly basis. If you want more, you can extract it. We don't mind, so we give you what you need if you want to do more fancy things. And if there are fancy things that are awesome that we think everyone can make use of, then we'll actually build them in for you. So whatever is helpful, we will add, but we always ask the question if this is something that will help 95% of our clients.
Super, thank you very much, Andrew. You have a right to answer now.
It's look, it's a good call out. We do our system is designed with a lot of science and a lot of things around, but we have it set up as management by exception. So we have really clean, simple user interfaces. Like I said, we have some of our companies are geared at 50 hotels to one person. So it is simple, but you can go into it more. It's not that you have to manage a lot, but there's a lot of the information on the BI side. So we have two different products. They're combined. I mean, but we do sell them differently. If you have your own BI strategy, you can export anything we have in our system out there. So fun and easy. But we have designed the BI because it really, the amount of data, to Marvin's point, you've got all this data in from the PMS. You've spent all this time and effort validating and making sure it's a single version of the truth. And then you are incorporating a bunch of other data sources in there. So whether it's Smith Travel, whether it's your OTA insights, pricing, whatever it is, we will ingest any data in there that we can get. We want to make sure that it has a positive. If we're taking into consideration to the algorithms, we want to make sure it has a positive effect. If not, we'll have it in there. Like Smith Travel doesn't really go into our algorithms, but we do have Smith Travel dashboards that you can go ahead and see what's going on. So our BI, our vision is, can we be a commercial dashboard? So not just what we have now, but we're partnering with a company called Atomize that's doing Delphi and Vision and CITY, all the sales and catering information and pulling that in there. We're looking at the marketing stacks, how do we get Cody and Google, and all that Google Analytics in there. So as a commercial leader, I can take a look at, through one single pane of glass, my entire commercial strategy. So I can take my forecast and everything and then do something on the sales side if I need to. I have a need period. Let's deploy the salespeople here. I've got a need period. Let's put together a marketing campaign. Here's the offer that my system is saying I should do. I think that is important, but we're not forcing anyone to work that way. If you want to export the data we have and build your own, you can. I just spent the last 3 years at Ambridge trying to build my own. And it's really complex. And I had 1,600 hotels, largest third-party management company in the world, with a team of 5 people in business analytics and another 10 revenue analysts trying to pull this stuff together. And it cost millions of dollars, and we still didn't have exactly what I wanted. So it was a build buy decision. I couldn't find anyone to buy it from, but building it wasn't fun. But if that's your choice, look, we're more happy to give you that.
Thank you. No, I wouldn't recommend any build that can't be avoided. I agree with you on that. I think there's a difference between, for me, like as a hotelier, I put the difference between using data, which still uses technology. So it's consuming data. It's not like making systems. It's just that I still think hoteliers, they shouldn't build a RMS. The CRS is like just a website is enough probably. But then there's also like, it's still your job as a hotelier to see like, how do I leverage my data? How do I make quick decisions, better decisions? And that, unfortunately, it's almost impossible. I mean, maybe you guys have nailed it, I don't know, but it's almost impossible to have everything that you need in one piece of software just because everybody's unique, right? So that's...
No, and let me clarify, we're not there yet on the, we're just starting to integrate some of the sales and stuff with our partner Atomize, and they're awesome. Just starting to look at the marketing stuff. So we don't have but the core information on, what's on the books and, the booking curves and the forecast and the pricing and all that. Yeah, we have all that in there. And then, because we do think you should have a system, whether you build your own or use ours, we allow you to enrich the data. So if you know that this rate code is an Expedia rate code, it's got an 18% commission on it, an extra switch fee and everything else, we allow you to append that to that rate code. So when you look at the net reporting, you can look at the cost of sale, the margin on that business, really use it as a tool to drive better commercial outcomes. And I think that's what's different, where the everyone's going to go to, whether you build your own or use a system to do it. You want, and you mentioned it, I don't want to pull from 5 different systems. And is it worth the time to spend the 10 minutes to get that for $500? It might not be, but if it's already in there, it should help you make better commercial decisions, and that's where we're trying to get to.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's Alexander's turn.
Thanks. We have a slightly different, just based on our mission as such, but we are not a BI reporting tool, but we do have full export capabilities through APIs, and the trend we see now among the bigger hotel groups is that they build this data lakes where we export into Snowflake, for instance, and so on. And then based on this, some of our clients are building their own customized dashboards where they can throw in all data. But the good thing is that you don't need to pull it together as a hotel group. They have this data lake with this data layer where they can customize things on top of this. It can be Tableau, but it can also be homemade. It can be whatever. But what I've seen what we started to also see with one client is that based on this data layer, they now actually, you can try it yourself. If you just do an export from your own RMS and throw it into ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever it's called, the latest version, and ask it to highlight and visualize the important stuff, or you can ask things about your data export. It will visualize tremendously nice what you're asking for based on your data, and you can ask it, you know, if you want to blend that with market data. Obviously, it's not entirely there yet because you need to verify, just because I'm a data purchasist as well, so they want to verify the data, obviously. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is that future, I think, is that, I mean, AI will, in terms of reporting, I think the customization will be done in real time. So if you ask a certain question from a data lake, you will get the visualization you need for that certain question you have at hand. It can be strategic, it can also be tactical, it can be set for a certain day or a certain period or the full year and whatever. And we're running this test now, and it's quite amazing. You can all try it. Just to dump in there, it will analyze it, it will structure your data according to the way it can interpret data and visualize it in a relevant way. You can even ask it to run an executive report based on that data for the last month, and we'll write your entire report, and you can phrase it, obviously, keep it one-pager executive report based on this data. It does that in less than 10 seconds. I mean, and to cover all those corners, those possibilities in terms of customization, I think will be very costly. There's a risk that it's become very costly if you're going to try to build all of those functionalities. There will always be a better reporting system, I think, or you will always be challenged, especially now with true AI, with OpenAI coming into play here to interpret data in a matter of milliseconds, and but also ingest the relevant market data into that mix as well, and be able to identify what data sources it has used to come to that analysis, or whatever the graphical input or output it does. So I think what we are looking at here going forward is going to be quite amazing on that front, on the reporting front, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, yes, it's not building it, but if a sort of forward-looking hotel group wanted to say, hey, I have my data in Atomize and I want to maybe ask ChatGPT what they think about it, that's a potential use where you're not trying to build a new ChatGPT yourself, exactly. Which, you know,
I mean, why reinvent the wheel, right? And I think that that's how we see it. Data lake, and our contribution to that data lake is to refine your data in a way, so our input. But then there are various other data sources coming in that data lake from other vendors, and it's refined in its way. And then based on this, they can create their own real-time dashboards and so on.
That's great. Cool. Thank you very much. Adrian, you have the honor of being last for this last question.
I'm thinking, Alexander, you're blowing my mind. That's my evening gone now. I'm just going to be in ChatGPT all
right.
Thank you for that. You ruined my life. I think, you know, what we've said all along, there's different levels of needs and wants for different hotels. So I say with absolute pride, we're really good at data. We didn't always be, like right back in our early days. You know, we worked with some PMSs who their data was dreadful, and getting the data out of their systems was really difficult. But we understand that world a whole lot better now, and we only ever work on certified integrations. We will never pull or scrape data. That's something that's incredibly important to me as the ethos of the company. But we are really good at data, and I think all of us as revenue management systems, the thing that still to this day excites me is being able to manipulate the data. I love that, you know, that you cannot get same point in time data from a PMS. You cannot tell me who booked on this date and stayed in this date, and I break it down by segment, by source, by channel, by rate type, by room type. You cannot get that from a PMS. And I worked out very quickly as a revenue management consultant, if I went into a brand new hotel, I worked out that I asked 16 questions And those 16 questions gave me an overview of their business, and I could start making decisions on rate if I got answers to those 16 questions. And that's where we started building our reporting. Answer me these 16 questions, please. And then that actually builds up how we build our rates and our forecasting and all of that. So like everyone, we think really nice visual dashboards, but I do not walk away from the fact that I am a revenue nerd. I love data. So we've got really nice reports. We've got lots of BI in there as well. We've got really funky reporting that can be customized, or our standard reporting can be pulled out. And I think for us, it gets really exciting when you show someone a report that they've wanted their entire life but never knew how to get from a PMS, or they spent hours manipulating it in Excel, and you show them this and they're like, you've just given me back 2 hours of my life, every week. So that's really important for us. And I think it goes back to what some of the guys already said. What we want to do, and again, it comes back to our company ethos, is we want to listen to our hotel partners. We want to check what data they want, the reporting that they want, how they want to visualize it, how they want to see it. And like everyone has said here, we're still a work in progress, and we're very proud of that. So we listen to a lot of feedback and build our reporting around that. But I think, again, like most of the guys have said here today, it's a very fine line, because some of the legacy systems, we don't want to be those guys. We don't want to be those systems that you feel that you have to have a degree in revenue management to turn on and switch on and use. So I have to tread that fine line of, what do our wonderful beachhead customers actually use and want and need? What do they need that they don't know they need yet? What can we deliver for them? And what's going to make sense? Where's the industry going? What should we be thinking about? But actually, sometimes I think we all need to take a step back and go, but these guys aren't doing this bit right yet. We want to bring them over here. We want to make them start looking at, something that could be happening in 6 months' time with a new, sexy, wonderful thing. But actually, they don't know that business on the books isn't a forecast, and the budget isn't a forecast, and that you should not have 47 market segments in your PMS, or you shouldn't have 52 room types. So sometimes we need to go, guys, seriously, can we get this sorted over here before we start trying to be something over there? Let's get the fundamentals right. And I think for a lot of hotels, the guys that are online here, any of the suppliers that are online today, if you go into a hotel that doesn't have revenue management, you're taking them leaps and bounds ahead of where they are today. So I think for that, all of us, we all do it slightly differently, but I think we're all doing a really good job in trying to move the industry forward a little bit. And we had this conversation before we came online. Lots of GMs will spend 10 grand on, a new cooker or cups and saucers or curtains for the dining room, but they won't spend, a little tiny bit of money on something that great tech that's going to improve their business and actually help their team and their staff morale as well. So I think we have a way to go in this sexy, lovely stuff of the AI and the ChatGPT and all of that, where we all want to be. We all want to be sitting there, but we still as an industry need to tick these boxes and make sure that we're actually solving real life problems day to day at the coalface of the industry. And I think that's important to me, certainly. And I think it's important for the guys on the call today, for sure.
Thank you very much. It is great. And I think you could say what you said about £10,000 for, like physical items or even RMS. You could say that about staff too, because I've never met a GM or a CEO. If you told the GM, I'll make you £10 million extra if you give me $1 million, you'll never get $1 million, which is crazy, because it's like, it's a very simple, like it's a no risk type of proposition. It's a win-win, but yeah, our industry doesn't really do these things. So I completely understand. And do you, just on the sort of BI part, do you get much asked to expose your reports and your data sort of to the outside world, or do your customers prefer using it within Right Revenue?
They certainly at the moment prefer to use it within Right Revenue. You know, we've got data coming from PMS. We've got event data. We have market data coming in, competitive set data, and all of that. So we're trying to look at not the 50 things that hotels think they want to see, but actually the 5 or 6 things that actually make an impact for you making a decision on rate. There's no point in having, how many unicorns are going to be dancing down the street next week. That's not going to impact your decision on rate. But let's look at the core data that is impacting. And some of it, going back to Alexander, what you said, some of it we allow to impact our algorithm, and some of it we fundamentally say no. And that's not who we want to be. And actually, some of that is quite lazy revenue management, and it's not where we want to be as a company. So some of it we present as information only, and some of it we will allow if hotels particularly want it in the algorithm. But we're very much like you, Alexander. It has to be a really good business case of why would you want to do this? Otherwise, you start building a camel with 15 humps, and nobody wants that.
No, I agree, and it can be very complicated because I've seen companies that want to use weather data, but then it doesn't mean the same thing to 2 companies, because I've seen a Spanish company that wanted to use weather in the UK because they get more bookings from British people if it's raining in the UK, but they're in Spain, so it's not even the local weather. So it gets a little bit complicated as soon as you want to sort of have a blanket approach. Great. Well, thank you very much, Adrian. Do you guys have any specific point that you wanted to add or questions? Because I realize I've been grilling everybody, but you might want to say something different.
You're doing a great job, but I did want to jump in. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes till we need to wrap this up.
Great.
We've got a couple of other questions as well we can throw in, but if you've got final points, please make any final points now that you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Look, to everyone's point here, you need a revenue management system. I'd love if you use ours. Use someone's. We do need to move the industry forward. That's a big part of what we want to do. It needs to be, as easy to use as possible. It is a marriage between the machine and the person, and the trust has got to be there. And I think that's what's held things back. I think, as systems and machines get better over time, one of the big thing I think for everyone on the call is the speed to getting the system up and running, and people didn't want a downtime. It's not like it used to be. You can get literal, recommendations, forecasts up in 4 or 5 days that are pretty good. 90+% accuracy in the first 4 or 5 days. So take a leap. Do it. Spend the 10,000 pounds, not on the drapes, but on the system, and you will definitely bode well for your asset.
If I can add to that, I think one thing that always helps is to look, 10 years into the future and think of what the hotel tech world will look like then. And I think what we're seeing right now is the very early ramp up of broadly deployed revenue management systems. And right now we are in a world where you significantly benefit when you jump on the bandwagon. So you're just taking business away from others. Your revenue will just very naturally jump 15-20% when you come from doing nothing to suddenly pricing intelligently. But what will happen with more and more hotels adopting pricing technology, the more it will hurt those that don't do it. So it's like a snowball that gets bigger and faster. So at one point in time, you're not having a benefit by using a revenue management system, but it lets you bleed out if you don't use one. So it's important that you're on the forefront of this switch, because that's when you will benefit. And then you will, in 5 years, in 7 years, you will have a very clear understanding where you need to move next, where the technology is going. Because if you only start to think about how you should do your pricing in 5 years, then it might be a little bit too late, because the rest of the group is already a couple of years ahead of you.
Well said.
I'm gonna jump in on some of that, unless Alexander, Adrian, any final comment to add into that, or
I just do this one for that one for
cool.
Marvin there, the emoji. Fine.
Okay, Adrian, anything from your side?
No, I again agree with everything that's been said, but if I could just go back to the actual teams in the hotel, I think that, as we've said before, we have less people expected to do more jobs. As an industry, we don't always jump on technology. We're not great, but I think because we have less people around now, I think this is a perfect time to look at revenue. We need to be supporting our teams and giving them great tech to help them do to have their roles, not even do their jobs better, but actually make them happier in their job as well, and career development, and keep those people sticky in your teams that they don't want to leave. The revenue management, I say it every time I get to talk, revenue managers rule the world. It's the best job in the world. So, use tech to get your people really engaged in revenue. And for me, it's a win-win for sure.
Make you more money and retain your staff. All important factors. Quick fire, and then I'll leave any final thought for you, Augustin. And it's picking up on a few points. Marvin, right at the very beginning, you spoke about this question: if we all know why we should be having like an RMS, why is take up still so slow? And you spoke about 50,000 use an RMS, and you quoted 950,000 that don't. So quick fire, single answer with a slight follow-up if you need it. And this question came in from Mike Serolta, head of commercial at Grand Hotel Excelsior. What is the forecast of percentage hotels using an RMS in the foreseeable future? So let's say 3 years' time, will we have shifted the dial significantly? If not, why not? I'm going to go round as I can see you guys. So Alexander, Marvin, Adrian, then Andrew. So Alexander, to you first.
So as most statistics in terms of when you get to certain tipping point, that usually for the rest of the market to follow, you if that rule applies here, it means that we need to as soon as possible reach 20% penetration with RMSs in the industry. I think when we reach that point, that will be the tipping point where it will go extremely, then it will be more like very normal to have it, and the rest will follow then, because you need to reach that tipping point. So, and when that is, I'm not sure, but I hope, and I'm sure that everyone on this call is doing their utmost to reach that tipping point.
You're all working together to get to that number.
Yeah. So I think we're talking about, I mean, in 5 years' time from now, I think it will be mainstream to have a revenue management system. But also on that note is that what we see also is that there is also the market is divided between those that are legacy mindset, how they have done things in the past, and they want to continue doing it that way. I'm talking about Excel and so on. But then the new generation, we can see that clearly. I mean, those that never try an RMS, that take the leap that Andrew talked about, taking the leap, they never go back, right? So for every hotel that lights up an RMS is a big win for this industry that has not used an RMS in the past. And we can celebrate this every day. We are happy to do that because all of us are bringing on new hoteliers every day. But the question is when we reach that tipping point of 20% of the market together, then the magic will happen.
Marvin?
We actually did the math based on change in expected market growth and attribution of technology spend to revenue management systems. And for us, it came down that in the next 6 years, it's roughly going to be another 100,000 hotels using a revenue management system. So that's a tripling.
Yeah.
It's a big lift. We will do our share. So if you call me in 6 years, I can hopefully tell you that we have anything between 30 and 40,000 clients. Then we've contributed.
We'll get you back on and we'll check the numbers.
Yeah.
Adrian.
I'm just thinking of the amount of grey hair I'm going to have in 6 years' time. It's not grey enough. Listen, the statistics, I think, are really interesting. I think all of us around here would love to get to that figure. We'd love to get to 20%. But Marvin, you're right. You've got hotels that want to stay in that Excel spreadsheet, and I think it's all of our jobs to bring that one step forward. And I think, in 5 or 6 years, I think let's mark this day, Trevor, as come back to us in 5 years, and we'll have the same conversation and see where
we're not having the same conversation.
Yeah.
But good point, Andrew. To you.
Yeah, really quick. I agree. 20% the tipping point. We'll get there. I'll take it differently. I think we're seeing the changing of the guard now. For a long time there were GMs that were running the hotels that did it. They need my gut's good enough. Now the GMs are coming in there are 40, 45, 50 years old. They've always had a revenue management. So especially if they came from a brand along their way or somewhere else, I think it'll become just common thinking here in a very short amount of time, because that changing of the guard, people have dealt with it. Revenue management is now getting onto its second generation of people. And I think there'll be a demand for the systems.
Makes sense. Quick follow-up, because a couple of you mentioned people. How much do you think, we know there's a hiring challenge making hotel industry attractive. If hotels don't have technology for people to use, I would imagine that makes them less attractive. So if they're investing in technology, they then are on a potentially level playing field. Or put it the other way, if they don't invest in technology, they're going to say, "Hey, why am I going to come and work? You're a bit outdated." Quick, yes, no. Alexander, same to you.
Quick one on that one. I mean, this goes for as with any business. I mean, it's a matter of of having the cost of client acquisition cost or the COGS, cost of goods sold. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to have as high margins as possible to be able to be sustainable as a hotel. Those that don't employ technology will have too low margins, and they will be washed out in the end. Mm-hmm. That would be they will have difficulty to compete.
Marvin?
I think you're not going to face that challenge, because if you don't implement technology, you're not going to have a hotel to run. So
no staff to need to employ.
Yeah.
That's nice and simple. Adrian?
Yep, agree with all said. I think that's a really good point, Andrew, that you said that we're kind of on our second generation of revenue managers, and these young people are coming up. They don't know what it's like to live without a phone like I do, but they don't. They don't know what it's like not to have a laptop and all of those things. So they've got a tech culture, whereas some of us are maybe old enough not to have had that. But also, I think too, again, what you said about the GMs, we've got wonderful GMs who are used to working the floor and being very customer facing and all of that. And we love them, and I couldn't do their job. But we also have a generation of GMs coming through that are tech savvy, that are commercial, and they want their properties to be ran like that. And they see people as an investment, and training and culture as something that's really important to them. So yeah, I think it's great that we've got a new way. I think we're on that cusp of a new way of thinking. And I think for those hotels, you said it very well, Marvin, if people aren't adopting technology, they're not going to be around. They're not going to have the wonderful people in their teams doing great jobs. So I think we're on the cusp of a great change.
Andrew, you brought it up. You mentioned it, so I'm sure you're in agreement with it. But go on, give me your...
Yeah, no, really, I've said it. I think everyone said it's a combination of tech and people. Mm-hmm. And that's how we not only work in hotels, the world works now. Every person, especially under 40, tech is a huge part of their life, just integrated into what they do. So if the hotel industry does not embrace tech and go with tech, we'll have a hard time getting the right employees, but also our customers and everything else. I know we're talking about revenue management, just with the guest experience and everything else, it's just got to be integrated into what we do, because it's going to be expected by our customers.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Right, one final, and I dread to even ask this, so it does need to be short because I'm conscious of your time as well. Right, 2 people have asked. So Rebecca Berger, Director of Revenue and Business Performance at Hotel Akura in Amsterdam, and Walid Ahmed, Director of Revenue at Kempinski Hotel, Gold Coast City, Accra. total revenue management. When can we expect RMSs to truly manage total revenue? Alexander, will it happen? Will it happen in my lifetime?
I'm sure that will be happening. I think that most of us here are working on that, and I think that the question is, total revenue is not that far away. So then the question also is, what is total revenue? Is it reporting on total revenue, or is it optimization? I mean, are we talking about? I mean, I talked to a big hotel chain about optimizing the restaurant menus the other week and so on. So it's what is total revenue management? I think that we go into profit management is the end game, where we're going to optimize based on profit. So that's further than just total revenue, right? Yeah. You need to consider cost elements as well.
Makes sense. Marvin?
I think we need to learn to walk before we run. So we have a lot of homework to do on the base. That's our job. And then we can, along with time, we will move into optimizing more. But I think we're still at the start. So let's not move ahead of ourselves.
Not run before we can walk. Adrienne?
I think I probably sit somewhere in the middle, in that I think as an industry, we need to do it. We need to be considering it. It's all something that we need to be thinking about in the future. But I agree with Marvin that we haven't got the fundamentals right. And actually, when you ask the question to a lot of hoteliers, what do you mean by total revenue management? They don't know. It's another one of those buzzwords that we as an industry hide behind. So for me, it's more important to get the next step for us, which is you've got need dates in September. Okay, now you've got need dates in September. You need to be doing this price, put it out to these people at this point. Here's your profitability. This is what you can spend on PPC. This is what you should expect. So it's more about driving actions to make your hotel more profitable. I think that's certainly the next step for us. But total revenue management means different things to different people. So,
Andrew, final thing to you, and then I'll go to Augustin.
Yeah, I always go with the owners who own the assets. They want to maximize the asset, every part of it in every way. So I think, you know, a lot of us, we're trying to ingest all the data. You need the data to start off with. We've got all the folio data and all the restaurant data and all that stuff that comes in. And you heard me talk about what we're trying to do from a commercial. You need the data first. Then I do think you need to optimize it. You need to optimize your meeting space. You need to optimize your menus. You need the data first. I think if you ask any owner, I just came from the NYU investment conference this week, they're talking about maximizing revenue and profit per square meter, right? So then it's not just, it becomes really any revenue that comes into the hotel, anything I can sell and make a profit from is part of total hotel revenue management. So, you know, are we there yet as an industry? No, I think the first piece is we got to get the data, and you got to find out what your occupancy, your ballroom is, and what your average yield on your restaurant seating. As soon as you do that, then you can start to put the optimization. So we're not there yet as an industry, but we need to get there. That's what our owners want.
Yeah, no, good point. Augustin, final thoughts to you on any of those last comments, or just a general passing comment you've got?
Sure, thank you. I mean, I would agree that I don't really know what total revenue management is in practice, because it especially if you go to profit, then it's just you're running a business. Basically, you're trying to make money and then make a, you know, so like very quickly it becomes very generalistic. And I'm not saying it's not important, but it's good to do one thing well. And I think unless you have a casino, like rooms are usually the most important profit factor. But you know, to sort of take a step back, I think the revenue management systems have made leaps and bounds, and in the past 20 years, it's been crazy. And when I started working, it took a year before you could use a revenue management system, because they had to learn, and learning was because you didn't have transactional data, so you had to take a snapshot every day for a year before you could use it, which seems completely crazy, and nobody would sign up for that too. And now we have some really exciting things. I think with a language model that can, you know, basically take your job explaining to your GM what's happening, and take some bits out of reporting. I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of efforts into using sort of marketplace data and third-party data, but nobody's quite there like to know exactly what we should use and how, and is it the comp set, is it the OTAs, is it the reviews? And I think there's a lot of progress made, but it's still a field of innovation in RMS technology. So it's a very, it's a fascinating area of, it's a niche area of hospitality, of course, but it's, I would agree with Adrienne that if you stick around for more than a few years in revenue management, usually you end up discovering that it's a lovely career, and you can go as deep as you want in terms of knowledge. So thank you to the four of you, and of course Trevor. It's been a very interesting session for me.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, Augustin, for posing the questions and leading the conversation. Really appreciate you could join us. Marvin, Alexander, Andrew, Adrienne, just thanks. I know thank you is obvious, but the fact that you guys were so open, sharing your thoughts, you guys compete with each other. We know that, but a lot of you conveyed the message that, hey, we just want everybody to take an RMS. Whichever one you choose, fine. We'll do battle in our demos or whatever it might be. But guys, please, let's just shift the needle, get into an RMS. So thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your insights. It's really appreciated. For everybody else that's watching, if I could just remind them that we have our follow-up session tomorrow, where we have another 4 RMS, where we'll be joined by representatives from BeyondX, Hotelistat, we'll have Libra, and we'll have Accelerate. And so really just the last things from me is just to thank you again for those that you have watched. We have noted any questions in the chat, and we'll obviously make sure to follow up on those of any that could have happened. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to me at trevor@jurrnee.com or jen@jurrnee.com. Jurrnee is spelled JURRNEE. That's JURRNEE.com. And thank you again for joining us, and hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks so much.